Tune in to the Social Impact Show with Sam Marshall, where we spotlight changemakers and their inspiring journeys.
That's exactly what we do. We spotlight changemakers and their inspiring journeys, whether it's individuals or organizations, and it's no different. South Africa's corporate sector invested over 12.7 billion rand in CSI spend in 2024. Yet the country still holds the title of the most unequal society in the world. At the recent Serious Social Investing Conference, leaders from across business, government and civil society came together to confront this crisis and explore how bold, collaborative and social investment can rebuild trust. Talking to me now about that conference and a couple of other things and the future is Leanne Emery-Hunter, who's the CEO of Tshikululu Social Investments. Leanne, good morning. Thanks for joining me.
Morning, Sam. Great to be here.
What a fun little word, Tshikululu. Maybe just very quickly before we even talk about the work of the organization, because I follow you. I'm part of the newsletters. I think I'm part of your community. I was at the event.
Fabulous.
I was at the event as well. Congratulations on this new position and how you're feeling.
Thank you, Sam. It's been wonderful. It's been a very warm welcome from the entire social impact community, and it's just a great opportunity to do good work with people who care.
Yeah, I love that. And I actually, a little bit of a tell. I got to speak to you at the Pizza Hut leadership event.
Yes, I recall.
When you were with Yestel, right?
Yes.
So I know how passionate you are about changing lives and how you think about it. And as I always say, if you listen to the show, it's easy to build a rocket ship. It's very difficult to change people's lives, right? Because there's a blueprint for it. Okay, so let's talk about the social contract, right? That's under strain. How do we get guys like yourself, the leadership? How do we get collaboration that's meaningful, collaboration that's bold? And I think your investing conference really touched on a lot of that. Not only was it informative, but the caliber of people in the room. I could only imagine if we could harness the potential of everybody in that room in terms of what they wanted to do, we would fix like South Africa like that.
100%, Sam. I was also really inspired by the caliber of speakers and the kinds of work they're doing,
The
and
depth of questions.
absolutely, and the passion to really make an impact. And I think the words that came out a lot was collaboration and systemic change. I think there's definitely the shift from charitable giving, and there's always going to be a space for charitable giving, versus systemic change and collaboration, and how we have these entrenched problems: poverty, youth unemployment, climate vulnerability. But it's only when we work together that this can be tackled really in a meaningful and systemic way. We need to work as big business, philanthropies, CSI practitioners, with government, and looking at all of the systems at play that can help us to really make a difference in the country, not just to one lives, but for generations to come.
But I think Tshikululu has done that very well over the years. I mean, I followed the journey. The organization is not just an advisory service. It really is a think tank for some of the social challenges we face. And it has the social muscle to pull the right people in the crowd. I mean, you had Dr. Imtiaz Suleiman there as well, amongst the recognized speakers and practitioners. And I just think that just from what the organization does on a day-to-day bread and butter issue, I think you've got your finger on the pulse.
100%, Sam. And we do a lot of research. So
you're data heavy.
Yeah, with our clients, we've got 27 years worth of data, and something that I'm really focused on now is how do we harness that data to improve programs? How do we work with our clients to say, okay, you're doing a community impact project, there are spheres that you need to think about systemically. You can't do a community upliftment. I mean, it was just Women's Month last month, project without thinking about gender-based violence, without thinking about how you empower young women to empower communities. So for us, I think we've seen great collaborations. Many of the clients we work with, I mean, just some fantastic collaborations off the top of my head. Josie Majosie.
Yeah, they were one of the guys there.
And they're clients of ours, and they're just doing amazing work in terms of a brilliant public-private partnership, bringing civil society together.
I wish more South Africans would know about that project.
Well, just go online and look up Josie Majosie. The work they are doing is fantastic.
Phenomenal.
We're working with the Association of Independent Publishers. It's quite relevant for your industry. And Google is backing the Digital News Transformation Fund. So it's really about uplifting the media sector. It's the enabling human rights, you know. So I think there's, during COVID, there were wonderful examples. Tshikululu partnered with DG Murray Trust and 4 other foundations.
Also a phenomenal organization. And the
amazing organization. So I think for us as Tshikululu, we have a interesting space in that we often play the role of convener, and I think it's something that I would encourage partners in the social impact space to say, if you have the muscle or the access to be able to exercise change, but you maybe need data or you need a convening space, we can help you. I mean, we're doing a lot of work with the Minerals Council, for example, to say, how do we bring these minds together? Because often the SLPs are being executed in kind of silos, and there's definitely an appetite for it. So I'm excited to see. I said at the conference, I really hope dialogue is important. I think dialogue is very important, but I hope that there are commitments, and next year we can say, this is what we discussed, and here's here's what we've seen. So that's my challenge to my team and to myself and to our organization. What are the actions that we took out of that conference?
Because I think you and I go to a fair amount of conferences, right? And so one of the things is, you're right, the dialogue is a good starting point.
It is.
But it would be lovely to see maybe the first start of the conference to say, guys, this is what we discussed last year. These are actually the partnerships and the relationships that have formed out of those conversations. This is what's actively happening on the ground. And then there's this kind of tracking dashboard that actually from one conference to another keeps on adding data where you could literally follow up and see what happens.
So Sam, I'll take on that challenge.
Okay, I love it. Well, you're as they say, you're the proverbial new broom, right? Okay. And look, this whole show is about finding the positive angles. There's enough platforms that will talk about, challenges, this is not working. So I want to reframe this question. 12.7 billion rand spent in 2024. I mean, that's a massive number. And depending on who you talk, it's a little bit more than 12.7, right? I mean, I think there's numbers floating around that it's, even if you factor in everything, time, all of that, it's around 40, close to 50 billion, even more, right? How do we make greater impact? And I know it's a loaded question because we're going to talk, the answers are as simple as, well, we need to collaborate more. We need to break down the silos. We are too silo driven. It's weird that in a community like Force Loris, there are probably 4, 5, 6 NGOs overlapping and they don't even know about each other. And I'll give you an example, like if you do Clover Mama, it's got a Clover Mama project which you know about, very successful, and they do aftercare programs and they do all of that. But in the same community you might find community keepers and they're not talking. Nashua has a program in the same community. And so I know the collaboration is a simple answer, but how do we get greater impact from the investments?
Yeah, I mean, it's the proverbial 5 hospitals but no road sort of analogy. But so I think the challenge, Sam, is that collaboration and systemic change is actually very complex.
Yeah.
So and it's also, many CSI cycles are annual. So many CSI practitioners are under pressure from their businesses to say, okay, we've done this annual program, we've got our annual report, our quarterly report, where's the impact?
Yeah, I'm smiling today. I've heard that.
And it is, and I mean, it's a genuine pressure that social impact practitioners have. Foundations, they're looking at, okay, so what have we done this year? What's the impact? And often the projects that we're working on that are systemic, that are collaborative, take years, decades even. I mean, A great example is, and one of my team members gave me this analogy, and I think it's a wonderful one. If you were walking next to a body of water, it's a stream or a body of water, a river, whatever, a dam, and a child comes past and they're struggling, you'll jump in and you'll take that child out of the water.
100%.
Next child comes down, you'll jump in, you'll fish the child out the water. If you suddenly get dozens of children coming down the stream, eventually you'll go to the top of the stream and say, what's happening up here?
Why are all these kids allowed to get into this dangerous space?
What's happening? And then you will have to look at, okay, so now there's a problem up top here, and now we've got to systemically fix this problem. What might happen though is that you might take your eye off the children that are drowning. So now this is a really, really complex situation. So we've seen that, we've got a client, Optima, they're an amazing education trust. They pivoted
I
from...
know their work.
Phenomenal work. So they pivoted from secondary education to early grade learning, because they said, that's where the greatest systemic impact happens. And they're working with provincial governments, and they're looking at all the elements. So they're looking at research and development. They're looking at curricular delivery, teacher support, training teachers, training lecturers. So the entire system, and working very closely with government to deliver this, is what you see as systemic change. It's not just a classroom intervention that happened for a year, but it is complex. And often when I'm sitting in rooms with my teams, and even myself, I'm not very patient. I want to see, come guys, where's the impact, where's the action?
And I think that's what we need, right? We need to, we need to maybe put our patient stick down and to say, listen, come on, guys. We've had this conversation for like 4 or 5 years now.
Where's the action? And the challenge comes in when you're talking about systemic change and collaboration, is that sometimes it does take a little bit longer. So you've got to, you want to see the impact and the action. And so sometimes it's a bit of a balance, right?
Yeah.
Immediately, this is what we can do. But if we're wanting to see lasting change, we may have to look at some of the structural issues. We may have to partner, which is more complex.
Do you think, Leanne, that one of the challenges we do face is that, and I don't want to word it in such a way, because I sometimes think we use these words because they sit in the salad bowl, in terms of trust in institutions. Now I know, and I can say this, and I'll happily put my dreads on the block, that there are a fair amount of organizations similar to Tshikululu, maybe Trilog to a degree, Rihanna Fenton, what she does with Generation Next, and the list goes on, where I think guys like yourself, you've worked so incredibly hard to be transparent, right? So when we talk about trust in institutions, I'm kind of wondering, are we talking government? Because this far, I'm not saying it doesn't happen, but I've not been through a corporate door, whether it's Vodacom, talking to Nedbank, wherever it may be, where there aren't legitimately genuine people trying to fix things. So when we talk about trust in institutions, what are we talking about?
I mean, there was that Edelman barometer, the brand trust report that came out.
I was literally watching the presentation yesterday. Carmen Murray did one.
Okay, yes. Yeah. I think I was at that function, and I saw just like overall trust has decreased, except I think in government has increased slightly since the GNU, as I recall. Unity, but I think there definitely is a need for transparency, and
we should have more transparency.
And I think there is also this frustration of like, okay, we talk a lot, but where's the action and where's the... So I think that's also part of that trust is, I trust because what you say you will do, you do. So very often if you've been told that something is going to happen and there's various complex reasons why it may not, but people trust when you keep true to your word, and when you are transparent, and when you have the governance in place.
Trust is earned through action,
100%.
And not kind of because so I mean, many would argue that there is this trust deficit between citizens, business, and government. But and look, and I do think though that just from a very observational perspective and doing so many of these interviews, that is there a trust deficit necessarily between citizens and business? I don't think so. I think business have stepped up in a massive way, and that's not me trying to be a cheerleader, but I really see business really trying. And I have so many conversations with business leaders that you can, and look, am I Inspector Gadget or Sherlock Holmes, where I'm trying to question everything that comes out of your mouth? I mean, that's not the case, but just on the action. Having spent a year traveling with an organization trying to empower local community, I mean, somebody doesn't have to tell me that. I can see that for myself. So I wonder kind of where the biggest trust deficit lies. And I don't think it's necessarily between citizens and business. I do think it's between citizens and government. And what government hasn't understood that they can use their relationship with business to foster a better level of trust.
100%. And I think where things work well in public-private partnerships is where government uses an instrument or an incentive, but the funding comes from the private sector, and the expertise comes from the private sector. So I think, like the Youth Employment Service, it's a good example of an instrument that was used, an incentive, but then it's governed independently. There's private sector funding. The jobs are stimulated by the economy.
And it's got data to back it up.
And it's got data to back it up. And I think that's also similar with Josie Majosie now, is that the Josie Majosie team is working in partnership with government, but they are using private sector funding and private sector expertise and civil society to enable change.
Yeah, and I mean, you know, as we come kind of wrap the conversation up, as we come towards the end of it, I am very heartened by how you guys as leaders are starting to ask questions of yourselves, right? And we're not pretending anymore. GBV is a problem. It's a massive problem. The impact of what happens in a home and how it spills into the professional environment is real. Youth unemployment is real, and it's stubbornly real, right? In actual fact, it feels like there are solutions, but I don't necessarily know why we are not implementing the solutions at this scale. I just want to get a sense from you I think this has been a very interesting year. I mean, just in terms of years ago, G20, everything that's happening with us, America pulling out. It just feels like this is a monumental year for like a whole bunch of things. How do you see Tshikululu kind of navigating this very unfamiliar space at the moment? We've never been in a space where one of the biggest donors in the world have just systematically decided we're not funding a whole bunch of things, haven't given credible reasons. We've seen countries that used to rely on that funding have to now rethink, innovate, find different solutions, and we don't know after this term whether all that funding will come back. But we do know that there are organizations in real crisis at the moment, and they're having to think from an innovation perspective. By the way, how do I pay that? How do I solve that problem that I didn't have before? How do you see Tshikululu and the role that you play navigating this new space?
I mean, I think the funding withdrawal that you mentioned is an interesting one, because if anything, it's really spotlighted the fact that we need local solutions, and that you can't have an entire vertical that is outside of the system. You have to work with government, you have to have local sustainable solutions, or else something like this can happen where literally the rug is just pulled out under you.
Literally, no warning. Kind of 24-hour notice warning.
Yeah. So I think it's actually just made it more urgent and relevant that we need local solutions for local problems. That doesn't mean that we can't still partner with phenomenal philanthropic organizations globally, and I think that's where the beauty lies actually, is if you bring private sector funding, philanthropic funding, potentially get government to take down the red tape and together build something that's exciting. I mean, our role, as I mentioned, we have a unique position in that we work with many big businesses and philanthropies across almost every sector in the country, and so I think our biggest responsibility is to look at how do we help the community to collaborate better. I mean, there's a lot of collaboration. It's not a new theme. It's not something that we haven't spoken about before, but it's really about doing it better. So I think we have a very important role to play there. And I think what we've been leaders in for a long time is governance. So how do you put the governance structures in place to ensure that you as a funder are protected, and more importantly, that the communities you serve are not left stranded and disappointed. I mean, there's been some scary news headlines that just make South Africa again like a less shiny investment destination. So for us, I think it's about really working with the community to enable collaboration, transparency, and also to work with those who are doing things that are cool, best practice on the front, and see if we can learn from one another. Like, if you've got a fantastic monitoring and evaluation system that you are using, we'd love to hear about it. So for us, it's really about collaboration for systemic change, and our role as an enabler of that.
And as we wrap up, final thought from you, 30 seconds. I think it is heartening when you have people like, for example, Kone Kagushe, head of social investment at First Rand. You've got Abby Khotle, executive director of human resources at Mercedes-Benz South Africa. You've got the guys from Josie Majosie. You've got Marina Madale, who's executive sustainability shared at MTN Group. And if you look at what they're saying, and if you look at how they're framing stuff, they're all literally saying, it's about action now. It is about, we are going to have a holistic approach to youth issues, to gender-based violence, but at the heart of it, it's about driving action.
Absolutely, and it's about being a little bit brave.
Yeah, it's about being brave. I heard that word, yeah.
It's about being a little bit brave, and I think I was really inspired by the conversations, and for me, as I mentioned, it's really about how do we turn those conversations into commitment and then into action.
I absolutely love it. Okay, that's in studio with us is the CEO of Tshikululu Social Investments, Leanne Emery-Hunter, talking to us and not just reflecting on their serious social investing conference, which brought leaders from across business, government and civil society together to confront various crises, but obviously in a very bold, collaborative, and, you know, a conversation that was filled with potential. It wasn't just doom and gloom, right? Which is very, very important. And then also talking about this 12.7 billion rand that the CSI spend was in 2024. But Leanne herself has asked us to, and what she's talked about is the social contract that is under strain, and that social investors need to be bolder, more catalytic and more collaborative. And that's really kind of the conversation. Go to Tshikululu's website if you want to find out more about the organization. It's very simple. Some of you might hear something else, so let me spell it for you. It's Tshikululu. So that's Tshikululu Social Investments. Find out more about the work that they do. They're proudly South African. They work with amazing organizations and institutions. And let's do this thing called consciousness. Let's consciously support the businesses that are supporting communities, and let's spend time investigating the organizations that are waking